Hey everyone, this is a tutorial on how to write your paper of RNA World and Origins of Life for Bio 112. I have the instructions for you on the website, and you'll go to the article on this link, and I have it opened here, we'll look at it. And then you'll follow the outline provided in the guidelines page and the writing rubric. Use APA to document this paper. You will most likely need extra sources to define the words in the article. Use your own words when writing this paper. Write it like you were trying to explain it to your best friend. Use the appropriate words and avoid writing all large words, because if you write all the large words, then I know that you don't know what they really mean. You're just copying the jargon. Jargon is the use of language by professionals in a particular discipline. And when you are summarizing articles, you want to avoid sticking with the jargon. You need to write it like you're writing it to a general audience that normal, everyday people will understand. So this is the rubric in which we will grade. And you see there's 4 parts: context and purpose for writing, content development, sources and documentation format, syntax and mechanics. So this is full of jargon, and I'm going to spell it out for you so hopefully you can understand. So let's take a look at the context and purpose for writing. Here's where you're going to identify your audience, the purpose of the work, and your ability to focus your element of the work. So for paragraph 1, I want you to focus on the context and the purpose for writing by describing the purpose of this article and identifying the appropriate audience, and then state the hypothesis of this article. For the next paragraphs, we're going to look at content development. So you're going to look at the main idea and clearly link it to the purpose. You're going to use, your details and make sure that you present the evidence for your hypothesis. So there's several sections to this paper. It's not a long paper, but I hope that by going through and telling you what I want in each paragraph, it will help you navigate the paper. So in paragraph 2, I want you to explain how autocatalysis occurs. So when we look at our article, after you have read the, introduction and determined your hypothesis, then you're going to go down to this heading here about life requires autocatalysis. In order to understand what autocatalysis is, you have to look at the word itself. So auto means self, and catalysis means to catalyze or speed up chemical reactions. In Bio 111, you learned about enzymes and how they were biological catalysts, and they speed up chemical reactions in your body. So with autocatalysis, we had to have molecules at the very beginning to catalyze themselves. These were the materials that were able to bind together and make the atoms into molecules. So discuss that in paragraph 2. In paragraph 3, describe how polynucleotides are able to store information and catalyze chemical reactions. So when we go down here, polynucleotides can store information and catalyze chemical reactions. And so polynucleotides, again, you've got to look at your word. That's a jargon word there. So poly means many, and nucleotides are that biological molecule that contains the sugar, the phosphate, and the nitrogenous base, like adenine, thymine, etc. So read in here, and it will talk to you about how the polynucleotides can copy themselves. And we know that they can because DNA and RNA make copies of themselves all the time. So try to go in and, explain that. Paragraph 4, you're going to describe the process by which an RNA molecule can fold on itself and explain why this would be important in catalyzing chemical reactions. So when you go down here, you can see that the single-stranded RNA molecules can fold into highly elaborate structures. And in science and chemistry, biology, we really focus on charge attractions. If you remember, opposites repel or attract and like repels. So when we look at polynucleotides and other, polyatomic molecules, they have charges on them based on their functional groups. And that's what this section is going to refer to, is how the different types of, charge attractions, etc., are going to help the molecule fold in on itself. And of course, it's going to be important for catalysis of itself and other molecules because, you have to have things, a surface for which chemicals can bind. And so just read through that and look at your figures. When you want to look at a figure, you just click on it and it'll bring it up. Make it bigger. Paragraph 5. The first part of Bio 112, we really focused on natural selection. And what natural selection does is it is an editing mechanism rather than a creation mechanism. And so natural selection is dependent on the environment at a particular time. And so when we have the RNA molecules living in a particular environment at a particular time, RNA molecules that are able to self-replicate, thus propagating themselves, are more likely to survive. Survival of the fittest, if you remember, is the ability to make copies of yourself, basically. So when we go down here, we see where self-replicating molecules undergo natural selection. And then finally, paragraph 7 asks you to describe, paragraph 6, I'm jumping the gun, asks you to explain how the ability of RNA to bind to amino acids influence protein synthesis. So again, we're going to go back to Bio 111, and we're going to remember that we have tRNA, we have mRNA, and we have rRNA. And so these three types of RNA are pivotal in the process of protein synthesis. Messenger RNA is what is, transcribed off of the DNA molecule, and then it leaves the nucleus, as we know, and it goes into the cytoplasm where it docks onto rRNA, which makes up the ribosome. Once ribosomal subunits are connected to each other, then the mRNA can be read and translated by tRNA into the amino acid sequence. So that's what this is talking about here. Finally, with paragraph 7, you'll describe the evidence that suggests RNA evolved before DNA and why DNA is more suitable now as the heritable molecule. There you go. All present-day cells use DNA as their hereditary material. However, we can see that, there is evidence that RNA rose before DNA in evolution, and it breaks that down. Finally, in paragraph 8, you're going to go into your summary. And you'll restate your evidence for RNA being the heritable molecule for early cells. You'll restate the evidences that suggest RNA was replaced by DNA, So you'll basically summarize, let me write this in here, summarize paragraphs 2 through 7. And then summarize your hypothesis. I'll switch those, actually. You're watching me make some edits. Super OCD. This will help. And then follow the writing rubric guidelines to make sure your sources and documentation are formed at a level 4, like APA. Review your syntax and mechanics to make sure that, the paper is easy to read, contains proper grammar, and sticks to the point of the article. We don't want a whole lot of fluff. Again, you're writing it like it's to a general audience. So we want to stay here in the 4 range and no plagiarism. Okay, you know that by this point. Plagiarism will result in a 0 grade. If you have any questions, email me. Otherwise, I hope this helps you format your paper and read this article.